This is Rockhampton with Nyree Johnson, the show about the people who hold our region together, the volunteers, the founders, the quiet achievers behind our businesses, clubs, charities and not-for-profits. Real stories told plainly from people serving Central Queensland with heart. Here's Nyree.
Today's guest is Marika Taylor. Now, Marika is a councillor with the Rockhampton Regional Council, and she is currently doing a fabulous job alongside her colleagues. And in addition, though, Marika's heavily involved in our community and always has been, even prior to entering public service. So I'm really looking forward to Marika sharing a little bit more about her time in community service, P&Cs, work life before being a councillor, and the community impact that she's had over all of these years, particularly with the Parkhurst State School. And yeah, it's really fantastic to have you on the podcast today, Marika. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Nyree. That's a lovely introduction. Thank you. So yeah,
you are very welcome.
Yeah, very chuffed to be asked to do this. I see all the other people that have been on previously, and yeah, it just makes me so proud to be part of a community that has so many awesome people in it.
Absolutely fantastic people, hey, and you would see far more of them than myself, especially in the role that you do today. And there's just so many incredible people out there doing that quiet work behind the scenes that keep our community moving, that keep our not-for-profits open, that keep our sporting clubs running. And you, of course, you've touched footy and P&Cs and a whole life before becoming a councillor. And I meant what I said. I can imagine how hard it is to do the job that you do, and I think all things considered and challenges that arise, I think you and the team are doing the best job that you know how to. And I think it's hats off to anyone who puts their hand up to work in local government. So yeah, thank you to you for being part of that cohort that keeps Rocky moving forward.
Yeah, and last week was particularly hard. With the budget coming out, not everybody was happy with that, and we went over and over that to try and get the best result for our community. And this job is a tricky one. We work for council, but we are representatives of the people. So we need to make sure that we're keeping that balance between the company and the people in our community.
Absolutely. And it's such a big responsibility as well to be, that representative of the community and of your division. But before we get too far into our podcast and we unpack all of the things that make you who you are and what your journey's looked like in life to date and all of the things you've been involved in, of course, I have a curious question. If you could be an expert at anything at all in the world, what would it be and why?
This one is pretty broad, but human behaviour, how people think and why they do things that they do, and how the people come to the decisions that they make and the things that influence them, and people in general. And that if I could be an expert in that, I think it would make my world a whole lot easier.
Oh, absolutely. It is fascinating, isn't it? Absolutely fascinating why people act and behave the way that they do, what they say, how they think. And of course, you would see it, you're at the front line of community, and you would see this every day of the week and the impacts that it has.
Yeah, that's it. It's certainly, would benefit. And I think that I'm learning every day, learning about, what people want and need. And learning is essential, I think. In any aspect of life, you need to make sure that you're listening, learning, taking things on board, and and improving as well. I'm all about self-improvement and trying to do better today than what I did yesterday. In everything that I do, I try and have that at the forefront.
Absolutely. I love exactly the same. Any opportunity to develop and learn, and even just learn a little bit more about yourself, a little bit more about other people, a little bit more about a particular topic or task or how to execute something. Absolutely agree.
Yeah, there's the last a couple of years, two and a bit years that I've been at council has been a massive learning experience. I was at the university for 23 years and I knew that job inside and out, and and loved it. The university was a great place to work. But, yeah, this has just had my brain, going full pelt. And, it's been interesting, to say the least.
Yes. Well, there was not another 23 years at the uni for you because Rocky needed you instead.
Oh, that's lovely to say. But, yeah, it was a great place to work, nothing against it. It just the opportunity arose for me to do this. The seed was planted by another P&C member, and she said, "Marika, you should run for council." And my initial response was, why would I do that sort of thing? Because I know that it's a difficult job. And then once that seed was planted, I thought, you know what? I think I can do this. I think I would be good at it. And I put my hand up and thankfully I got a great result.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And it's always good when there's other people out there cheering you on or, just shoulder tapping you and maybe making you think about something a little bit different. And I even know in my own situation, I wouldn't have voluntarily run for mayor when I did. It was that I was strongly encouraged and, someone said, "Hey, I think you could do this." And and the rest is history. Obviously, I didn't have the same results as yourself, but that's okay. Never say never. I'm young. There's a lot of time left.
Yeah, going for mayor is such a big undertaking. I commend anybody that goes for that position, and it is a pretty full-on job. Our mayor's, in there every day battling for our community and doing great things with us as a team.
That's so good to hear. So tell me a little bit about, your life far before council, of course, but, we all have these key moments or people or experiences that influence who we are in the world and how we show up today as we are. What has that looked like for you? What were those early moments that really did truly shape who Marika Taylor is?
Well, how far back? So I'm born in Marra, so a central Queensland girl, and my parents went broke share farming cotton there. And so Mum said, "That's it, we're going to the mines." And the Curragh mine had just started out at Blackwater, and Dad got a job there, and he thought it was the greatest thing ever to have a paycheck every fortnight. And back then, I think the rent on the house was $17 a week, and it was truly wonderful. My mum and dad battled for a lot of years, in farming, and to have the life that they had in the mines was pretty awesome. So I had that as a background, and then I did come to Rocky. I worked at the Frenchville Sports Club, was my first job as a waitress, and then I left. My sister was going through a divorce, and I went out to a little town called Injune, and I went there just for a week visit. I stayed there for about 10 months, and I worked in the pub out there at Injune, and then I travelled around for a little bit. I ended up back out at Ralston and up at Carnarvon Gorge. That's where I turned 21, and then my world sort of flipped upside down. My sister attempted suicide, and this is a tough one.
Yes, I can imagine.
And I had a young niece here in Rockhampton at boarding school, and I went, "Oh, gee, she wasn't coping with all that had happened." And so I was 21, and when I think back to this time, I'm like, holy dooly, I don't know whether I was naive or just confident, and I just packed up my car. And I moved to Rocky. I didn't have anywhere to live. Everything that I owned was in my car. So, and I think back now, and I think I was actually homeless, but I didn't realise it at the time. And I had a good friend who let me, just roll out my swag. And then somebody rented me a room. And then I had another friend, and we rented a house together. And then, it just went from there. And then I got the job at the uni. And then, I just embedded myself in the community, played touch footy for many years, got married, and had my 2 beautiful kids, and ultimately got divorced, unfortunately. But Adrian and I are great mates. We just went away to the Junior State Cup Carnival, and we all reffed together, Adrian and Lincoln and myself. Addie played, and it was life is good. And it's been interesting to think back about, my life and where it was, 27 years ago.
And there's such significant moments as well in our life, and, things that to this day, all of these years later, that are incredibly hard to talk about. but they really do truly shape who you are and what this community means to you, I guess, and how you've essentially grown up in it as a young
Yeah.
adult.
Yeah. I had a fantastic time in my 20s, very, very social. And I always had a second job as well. I was not one to sit still very much. And I think that social aspect of being a waitress and barmaid, I worked at the Alleys, at the Great Western, at the Glenmore, and met lots of people and just I like people. So it was fitting. I still had that great job at the university, but also working in hospitality for many years, gave me that opportunity to meet a lot of people.
It's such a good place to start and continue working in, of course, hospitality. It's such a grounding educational opportunity all round, because there is such a huge shift and dynamic of people that you need to engage with every day. And I guess that comes back to the human behaviour. That would be very, very helpful in a hospitality setting.
Yeah, and there was also those times in hospitality, when you are serving people alcohol and their personalities do change, and different situations that arise from that, whether some of them not so pleasant, and how you can deal with them, and learning to read people and changes in their attitudes and behaviour, and then being able to deal with that in a non-confrontational way, so that you make sure that you're looking out for your patrons.
Yes, absolutely. Keeping everybody safe. That's so important in hospitality. And I think it's something that we as patrons forget. That is in the back of almost every hospitality worker's mind, is to keep people safe and, having a good time and a good environment for them to have that good time in.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So you mentioned just before, it's someone strongly suggesting that you consider running for council. I guess it's redundant to ask what inspired your journey, because, that opportunity, that shoulder tap, that little bit of a nudge. But, was there a pivotal moment when, someone said that to you, and then if you're anything like me, you say no first, and then you eventually come around to the suggestion, and was there a key turning point that kind of you went, yeah, okay, I'm absolutely going to do that? Was there a decision or an influence there?
It was just that seed being planted, and I think, and it wasn't long. It was a pretty quick decision for me to make. And in politics, it was a vacant seat. I knew that Donna Kirkland, who is now our state member, was going to be doing that. So, and someone said, if you're going to do it now, because it's your greatest opportunity to do that. And I just went, yep, okay. And to be honest, I'm a little bit competitive, and I just threw myself into it. I took it as a compliment. Somebody said that I was, funded by a party, and I wasn't. I just I had a little bit of money given to me by my brother-in-law and my nephew, and they said, here's $1,000, go hard. And I contributed the rest, and I got T-shirts made, and I had the kids out doing letter drops, and I had lots of people within the community out there helping me. And it was, just went hell for leather, and wanted to, once I'd made up my mind, I was pretty determined that this is a path that I wanted to go on. But in the same thing, if it didn't pan out, I would have been, oh, well, I gave it my best shot, and I still had a secure job. But I'm glad that it turned out the way it did. It's been a real life changer for me, definitely.
No, that's such a wonderful reflection, and going all in, going hard. I just love that, and it's interesting about the competitive nature as well, because some people are, some people aren't, and I guess it's an absolute advantage when you are, and, it's that little bit of a push and a drive behind you.
Yeah, that's it. And they're out. There's people who are leaders. There's people that are, happy to just go along with it. And I feel that one of my strengths is that I liked, I'll say lead and be ambitious. But sometimes, if you ask my family, I'm just bossy. But But I get things done, I still have my family ring and say, can you get this sorted for me? And I'll definitely give everything a good go. And yeah. So, yeah,
And you
that's
definitely don't do things by halves.
no, just get in there and give it a go. And
Yeah.
like I said before, sometimes I wonder, I bought this house and it was pretty ordinary. I
Mm.
honestly think it was an ex-drug house.
Mm.
And my daughter, she was only 7 at the time. She's like, "We're not living here, Mum." And I said, "No, it's okay." And yeah, and I had a great team of builders and a carpenter and tiler and a plumber and electrician and all that. And I think they felt sorry for me because honestly, the house needed a lot of work. But I just went, you know what, this is if I'm going to do this, I've just got to get in and get it done.
Wow. So I think it's a really good life lesson for your daughter to have, be looking at the house that you'd bought and you were walking into, and you obviously was a fixer-upper, and only you could really see the vision. And I absolutely know what that feels like, because when I bought the land that Nathan and I built a house on back in 2013, 14, something like that, everyone would look at this land and it's very hilly and it's like goat country. And they were like, "I can't see it, that's too hard basket," all this sort of stuff. And we had the vision. So I absolutely can relate with you, because you got this house and you had the vision and you made it work. And regardless of whether the tradies felt sorry for you or not, you made it work.
Yeah,
Yes.
and we do. The kids get sick of me hearing it because I love my kitchen and it's just how I like it. And the kids like, "Yeah, Mum, we know it's awesome." And yeah, and it is. And we love our home, and very thankful. There was a little voice inside. I don't know, whether my dad was any influence. He passed away in 2020, and I bought this in 21, but I was just overwhelmed with, you need to buy. And I hadn't been looking. This is the first house that I looked at and got it. So sometimes I just think things are meant to be. If it just flows and it happens without too much resistance, then sometimes it's just meant to be.
Absolutely. So tell me, to you, what does Rocky mean? And what does that community contribution mean to you? Because, in a P&C, of course, you are very embedded within a school environment. There's a whole community there. You've got young children that you get to make a positive impact on. Then, of course, touch footy as well. And there's probably a million other things that you wore hats for, because I know you well enough by now to know that you're not just going to have, 3 hats on the back seat. You've probably got 50 different hats to pop on. But what does Rocky mean to you, having come here at, 21 and really building your life here and then giving back to that community?
Yeah, I now think of Rocky as a big country town, really. My kids are quite used to me going to the shops, local shops, and pulling up and having a yarn to everyone. I'm the type of person, I don't like to walk past somebody that I know without saying g'day. I've just, and seeing how they're doing and things like that. But I love that feeling of community, within my neighbourhood, that knowing all your neighbours, and I feel that's a really big part of where you live, is to know who your neighbours are. But also security. Being a single mum, I felt that I just went around in the first week and knocked on the door and introduced myself, and it's just, I love that feeling that if something's going on, that you can talk to your neighbours. But I think that we just have a great community here. There are so many people out there doing wonderful things, and I do see a lot of it. And it's also, I go back to the P&C, and when I started there, I'd only been to a couple of meetings, and I got nominated as president, and I was like, hang on, I don't know what's going on here. And then I was like, okay, and me being me, I went, okay, well, let's just get on with it. And I think being part of something is, a lot of people want that. And it's an underlying, being part of a team or being part of a community group and having those connections and feel like you're doing something, I think is really important. And I think if more people knew how awesome it feels to volunteer, to go and give your time without any expectations of any kind of return other than to make our community better or make our school better or make our sporting club better. It really is a good feeling. And the P&C, I just loved that 4 years that I had there. We had a fair bit of construction going on. So to be part of that and to raise funds for the kids so that they could have better things at their school. And also, again, being, a single mum and 50-50 care, I just wanted to be in their lives because, my daughter's now in year 6 and she'll be off to high school soon, and that, just being part of their lives and their, getting to write the little notes on the tuck shop bag, Mum loves you. Yeah.
Yes. That's so cute. Yeah, I absolutely can relate. I made a joke that when my daughter turned 18, my oldest daughter, that I was going to go and join Chaplain Watch because when she was in dancing, I was in the dancing committee. When she was in Girl Guides, I was in that committee. When she moved to Scouts, I'm obviously heavily involved in Scouts and school P&Cs, both primary school as well as high school. And I thought, what am I going to do when she's 18? How am I going to stay connected? I'll go and do Chaplain Watch. And she's turned around to me and gone, you will not. That was always a bit of a joke in my home because I'm like, I don't know what next. She's 18.
Yeah. And it is. And every child's different. My son, he's at nearly 15 and I'm nearly not cool anymore.
Yeah.
He's still my baby boy and but he's off playing footy and wanting to hang out with his mates and stuff. And I remember what it was like to be then, and it's hard as a parent to just release, let go. That you still see them as their little selves, and it's an interesting time to go through. We're having puberty and perimenopause all at the same time in our household. It's a good time.
Fun time all round, like just crack out the popcorn. I think it's worth a party, really.
Yeah, that's it. So, interesting times, but I'm sure that we'll get through it.
Oh, yeah, of course. So tell me a little bit about, in life we all have significant challenges that we have to overcome, but we also have incredible highs and amazing moments, either end of the scale or an example from both. Has anything ever come up in your world where it's been a significant challenge or a fantastic, amazing experience that's really kind of changed the direction of what you were doing? Like it was so impactful that it changed the course of where you thought you were going.
Yeah, well, the thing that comes up straight away is that I had to do IVF for my kids, and all through my 20s I'd been ticking things off my list and living my best life, and then I had a plan. I'd get married and have kids and go from there. And then when that didn't happen, and it was a real challenging time. I'm the youngest of 6. My mum had 5 kids in 13 years. So my nieces, I was an auntie when I was 2. So my nieces and nephews are very close in age to me, and they started having children and all that all around me. We all got married at similar times. And so that was really hard, but I wouldn't have wished the challenge that I was going through, that my husband at the time and I were going through, on anybody. And and people would say, and those people, they can just have babies so easily, but that's their journey. And I had to just get back. This is my journey. This is something that I have to go through. I will do whatever it takes to have our children. And I think that actually made me a better parent because I appreciate the fact that I'm a mum.
Yes. I do have a couple of friends that have been through that IVF journey, and it's heartbreaking, but, going through it, of course, and supporting, but when there is a positive outcome, it's just so rewarding, and there's so much love, and, that the babies are coming into this world in such an amazingly caring environment, and it's so, so special to watch that to come to life for friends, for example.
For sure. Yeah, no, to see those little lines, and, you go through your 20s and you're dreading ever accidentally falling pregnant, and then you get into your 30s and you're married and you're like, okay, I'm ready now. And then it doesn't happen and you're like, holy dooly, yeah, how am I going to get through this? But you do. And the technology and the advancements that they've got now are just absolutely amazing. And I'm so thankful that there's a lot of people out there that have been able to become parents because of that technology and the what they can do now. It's amazing.
Absolutely is. It's incredible. Yeah. So tell me what drives you today? And the reason I ask that question is because it's not a secret that and I'm making a presumption here, of course, because I don't have this experience, but it's not an easy job to do what you do and to be quite recognizable and well known in the community. You know, there would have to be days that are just incredibly hard and you probably, I'm putting words in your mouth, but wouldn't want to get out of bed and face the day, but you still do. You consistently get up and you show up for this community and you do the job that you've been elected to do, which is, you know, such a privilege, you know, that the community's trusted you with that. But what's that thing that just keeps driving you forward, even in those really, really hard times?
I think that people say, "Oh, how do you deal with the whingers?" I don't see people as whingers. It's obviously an issue to them, and it's probably a little issue in the greater scheme of things, but to them it's obviously a big issue. And I see it as a challenge. I really, if there's something that I can do or some procedure that can be placed or a policy change or however we can make something better, I think is a good thing. And I see it as a challenge. We continually need to improve things and make things better. And not everybody agree that council is doing that or that I'm doing that, but that's what drives me is to make it a little bit better. And that's the basics of it, just to make things better. And, you know, there are some days where I am all peopled out. I can just want to be at home, grab a wine, sit in front of the fire, you know, down the backyard and just not people for a little minute. And but it doesn't last very long, fortunately. And I do like to have people and human interaction. And yeah, I'm lucky in that. It's not a job for everybody. I don't think everybody would be suited to it. You have to really have that passion for your community and the passion for people and the drive to want to make things better.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because it would be really easy to gloss over the fact that sometimes it's hard and sometimes you just need a wine and a fire. You can keep the wine though. I won't have the wine. I'll have the fire, maybe some gin. So what advice would you give to people out there coming along after us, not necessarily entering the political world, but just younger people that, you know, are navigating their early days into adulthood? What advice would you give to them?
What I give to my kids and what I say to them, and, you know, I feel my job as a parent is to make sure that they're young, capable adults and going into this world and can contribute in some way, in a positive way. And it's just the basics. And I think that there's a lot of, you know, with social media and everything, for young people to have everything straight away. And you have to start at the bottom sometimes and work your way up, and hard work and doing something for yourself and doing the hard yard is the greatest satisfaction you can ever have. Nothing against people that are more fortunate, but I just know that a little bit of hardship builds resilience and gratefulness for what you have. So I think if people just realise they're not going to have the top paying job and they're not going to have the fantastic house straight away or the latest model car, that they just maybe just have to start where they can and work their way up. And I think that there's a lot of, you know, business owners out there that are doing great and that they have worked hard for it. And I commend anybody that works hard to get where they are in life.
It definitely is something that I like to sit back and look at what somebody's achieved, especially when I've known them for a very long time, and you get to see them in the trenches without being in there. Obviously, everyone has their own version of what hard looks like and that work ethic towards working towards something that's worthwhile. But yeah, it's anyone that is really, really successful in life that's got it easy, that would be a minority.
Yeah, that's it. And I think a lot of people are hard on the younger generation, but there's some good kids out there and with drive and ambition, and I think that's great to see. And it's I hope that in the future that they continue to, contribute to our society as best as they possibly can.
Absolutely. And it's up to us as older people, and the people that are older than us and more experienced at life to create those environments where it's safe for them to learn and it's safe for them to figure out the world and what community service looks like, or, just what being a good human looks like.
Yeah, and that's it. And it's funny how everything comes around, that waitress, that 17-year-old waitress, you treat your younger generation with respect. I, over the years, hadn't been treated with respect. And I remember those people.
Mm.
And there's a saying about, it's about how you make somebody feel. And I think that's really important, that people remember that you need to make sure that you make people feel welcomed and listened to, and that they're important as well.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that they matter. They matter just as much as the person next to them.
That's it. Yeah.
It has been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast today. And I am very, very thankful that in your very, very, very busy schedule, you were able to catch up with me and share a little bit more about yourself with the Rocky community and just your journey. It's quite inspiring, and I think there will be a lot of people out there who are big advocates and big fans of yours, as they are of other councillors, of course, and other elected members in our community. But it's been a real privilege having you share that little bit of a more in-depth side of who Marika is.
Oh, no, thanks, Nyree. I'm a pretty open book, but I've never done this before, and I was really stoked that thought I was, influential enough or important enough to do this, and I really do appreciate it. And I know that you're also extremely busy and have lots on, and I really give credit where credit's due for you getting in and getting this done and doing it. I know that social media isn't always the easiest thing to navigate. I'm trying to be a little bit more out there, but it doesn't come naturally to us Gen Xers.
Yeah, we'll have to have a gin and a wine one night by the fire, and I'll give you some pretty good advice, because I've been playing in the world of social media for a little while, and I really just love it, actually.
Yeah. Oh no, some people just have the knack for it, and I've got a really good friend who's prompting me on things and encouraging me and just gave me some really good little tips, and so I'm trying to make her proud as well and get out there and do a little bit more, and probably try and get onto a few different platforms and bits and pieces at some stage. But it's a work in progress.
Really, really good point though, and really good to recognise though that like you do an incredible amount of work for the community, and what we see on social media is just 1% of it, and for yourself it might just be 0.25% of it at the moment, but even if you did share a bit more, which would be fantastic, and I'm sure lots of people would love to see more of whatever you're sharing and up to, but it can, you just have to call it out. Like, it's not everything. It's 5 minutes of a week, which has got 7 days and 24 hours. And it's just, I mean, I love it. I love social media. I love the opportunities that it gives us, but it's not the definition of our contribution,
No, and it's it is hard, because when I'm at an engagement or I'm listening to in a meeting or something like that, any events, business events or anything like that, I like to be present and I like to be engaged and give that my full attention. And then I walk away and I go, oh, I probably should have, let people know a bit more about that. And I just have to, get it into my mind that I need to share a little bit more and let people know. And because sometimes there's things that I attend and I know that the community would love to know a bit more about it and what's happening. And it's just trying to get into that routine of taking the photos. There's lots of people out there that are really good at it, and I'm working on it. It's not something that I never had to do in my previous job. So it's, getting there eventually.
Yes. It all takes practice, hey, and none of us are getting it right all the time. None of us know what we're doing in life, really. We're just figuring it out as we go and helping each other, and that's all we can really ask for. And in our community like Rocky, we're in one of the best places to be positioned to do it well.
Yeah, that's it. We're just winging it. That's just life. I think you look at lots of people that you think, geez, they've got it together, and then you see a little bit more into it, and they're treading water like the rest of us. I remember a mum came up to me and she said, I don't know how, this is when I was in the P&C, I don't know how you do it. And I said, just here, look at my car. And I had shirts and I had footy boots and I had chairs, and it was hectic, water bottles, everything. And I said, this is actually what my life is like. It is just from one to the other, and it's hectic, and it's not everything is perfect. Sometimes the washing sits on the lounge for a few days, and it's it's not, my life is not perfect. We don't all have our, excuse language, shit together. Sometimes it's a little bit chaotic.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And anyone who says otherwise is just fibbing.
Or they have a housekeeper. And credit to them. Yep. I've thought about it. I've definitely thought about it, but I don't. But if I don't begrudge anybody if they need that extra help to keep on top of things, because I know if you have a clean house, then your mind feels a little bit better. And if I can keep it in some sort of order, then everything else seems to flow all right.
Yeah. And that's what you want. You want all right. You aim for progress, not perfection.
That's it. Well said.
Yeah. Well, it has been an absolute privilege having you on the podcast. I'm very, very thankful for your time. Yeah. And I really look forward to sharing a little bit more about who Marika is with the audience of Rockhampton with Nyree Johnson. So thank you so much.
Good stuff. Thanks, Nyree. We'll see you about.
That's another episode of Rockhampton with Nyree Johnson. If this story stayed with you, follow the show on Spotify and YouTube, so the next one finds you. And if you know someone in our region quietly doing good, someone who belongs in this chair, get in touch through www.nyreejohnson.com.au. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.